His hands were on my hips, urgent, pulling me against the cold edge of the kitchen counter. The air smelled of garlic and basil from the sauce simmering on the stove, but all I could feel was the heat of his breath on my neck, the rough scrape of his stubble as he pressed closer. My heart pounded so loud, I swore it would drown out the clock ticking on the wall. It was 6:17 p.m. My husband's car would pull into the driveway any minute. I gasped as his fingers tightened his body, pinning mine the rhythm of his need, matching the frantic pulse in my chest. The linoleum floor was cool under my bare feet, but my skin burned where he touched me. His shirt was half unbuttoned, his cologne sharp and dizzying, mixing with the sweat on his skin. I clutched the counter's edge, my knuckles white torn between pushing him away and pulling him closer. Every sound, the hum of the fridge, the distant bark of a neighbor's dog felt like a warning. We were stealing seconds, and they were running out. "I can't," I whispered, but my voice broke and he didn't stop. His lips found mine, desperate, silencing my protest. The weight of him, the pressure, the way his thigh pressed between mine, it was too much, too fast. And yet, I couldn't make myself move. My body trembled, caught in the pull of wanting him, and the terror of what we were doing. The sauce bubbled over, hissing on the burner, and I flinched, my eyes darting to the window. Headlights could sweep across the glass any second. I never imagined I'd cross this line. Not me, not at 38, with a husband who still kissed me goodnight and a life that looked perfect from the outside. But here I was in my own kitchen, with Ethan, my husband's best friend, breaking every rule I'd ever set for myself. It started 6 months ago, a slow slide into something I couldn't stop. A glance that lingered too long, a touch that wasn't accidental, a conversation that went too deep. Now we were here stealing moments in the one place I should have felt safe. Why did I do it? I've asked myself that 1,000 times, lying awake at 3 a.m. while my husband Tom slept beside me. It wasn't just the loneliness, though, that was part of it, the way Tom's attention had drifted to work, to routine, to everything but me. It was the way Ethan saw me, really saw me like I was more than the woman who packed lunches and paid bills. He listened when I talked, his eyes locked on mine, and it woke something in me I'd forgotten I could feel. Something alive, something reckless, but alive came with a price. Every touch, every stolen moment was a step closer to ruin. I wasn't just risking my marriage, I was risking everything. My home, my family, the way people looked at me. What would you do if the one thing that made you feel alive was also the secret that could destroy your life? I didn't have an answer, but I kept choosing it anyway. Ethan's hands slid under my shirt, his fingers grazing the skin above my waistband, and I froze. The clock read 6:19. Tom was late, but not by much. He'd texted an hour ago, leaving the office now, and the drive was 20 minutes if traffic was light. My pulse hammered in my throat as Ethan's lips brushed my ear, whispering my name like a plea. I wanted to sink into it to let the world disappear, but the fear was louder. A car door slammed outside, sharp and close, and my stomach dropped. I shoved Ethan back, my hands shaking as I yanked my shirt down. "Go!" I hissed, my voice barely audible. He hesitated, his eyes dark with something I couldn't name, desire. Guilt, maybe both. Then slipped out the back door just as the front lock clicked. I turned off the burner, my hands clumsy, and forced a smile as Tom walked in, his keys jingling in his hand. "Hey, hun," he said, loosening his tie. "Smells good." I nodded, my throat tight, and glanced at the back door. It was still ajar, just an inch swaying in the evening breeze. If you've ever felt the thrill of doing something you shouldn't, and the fear of getting caught, you're not alone. Please like and subscribe. The longer you stay, the more stories like this will find the people who need them. Let's begin. My life wasn't supposed to feel like this. Every morning I woke up at 6:30, made coffee, and packed Tom's lunch while he scrolled through emails at the kitchen table. The house was quiet, tidy, the kind of place people called charming when they came for dinner. Photos of our wedding 10 years ago, both of us smiling like we'd cracked the code to forever hung on the living room wall. We weren't unhappy. We paid our bills, went to barbecues, planned vacations we never took. But somewhere along the way, the space between us grew. His touch became a pat on the shoulder, his compliments a reflex. I was 38, and I felt like I was disappearing. Ethan was different. He'd been Tom's best friend since college, always around barbecues, game nights, the occasional fishing trip. He was 40, single, with a laugh that filled a room and eyes that seemed to see straight through you. I'd known him for years, but last summer something shifted. It was a Saturday in July, the three of us in the backyard, burgers on the grill. Tom was inside on a work call, and Ethan and I were alone stringing lights for the party later. He handed me a clip, his fingers brushing mine, and he didn't pull away. His eyes locked on mine steady like he was daring me to notice. My stomach flipped, and I looked away, but the air felt heavier after that. I told myself it was nothing, just a moment, a spark that would fade. But Ethan started finding reasons to be near me. He'd stop by to drop off tools for Tom, lingering in the kitchen while I chopped vegetables. He'd ask about my day. Really ask, and I'd find myself telling him things. I hadn't told anyone how I missed painting, how I felt stuck, how I wondered if this was all my life would be. He listened, his head tilted, his gaze, never wavering, and it was like he was pulling me back into focus. I wasn't just Tom's wife to him. I was Claire. The loneliness had been there for years, a quiet ache I'd learned to ignore. Tom wasn't cruel. He was steady, reliable, the kind of man you build a life with. But he didn't see me anymore, not the way he used to. Our nights were spent in front of the TV, his hand resting on mine, but never really holding it. In bed, he'd kiss my forehead and roll over, and I'd lie there staring at the ceiling, wondering when I'd stopped feeling wanted. Ethan changed that. He made me feel seen, desired, like I was still the woman who used to dance in the rain and laugh until her sides hurt. It wasn't supposed to go further than looks. But one night, 3 months after that backyard moment, Tom was at a conference, and Ethan came over to fix a leaky faucet. The house was dark, the kids at my sister's, and the silence felt too big. We stood in the bathroom, the drip of the faucet, the only sound, and he turned to me, his face inches from mine. "Claire," he said, his voice low, "tell me to leave." I didn't. His hand found my waist, tentative at first, then firm, and when he kissed me, it was like a dam breaking. We stumbled to the couch, clumsy, desperate, the weight of his body anchoring me to the moment. Afterward I cried, not because I regretted it, but because I didn't. That's how it started. Stolen moments always on the edge of disaster. A quick touch in the garage while Tom mowed the lawn. A whispered conversation in the hallway at a friend's party. Every time I told myself it was the last, but the pull was too strong. Ethan was a current I couldn't swim against, and I didn't want to. The secrecy made it worse, or maybe better, the thrill of his hand brushing mine under the table, the way his eyes found me across a room. It was like we were the only two people alive, even when we were surrounded. The kitchen became our place, strange as it sounds. It was where I spent most of my time, where I felt safest, and somehow that made it more dangerous. The counter where I rolled out dough became the place where Ethan's hands found me, the sink where I washed dishes, the spot where he'd press himself against me, his breath hot on my ear. The familiarity of it, the smell of coffee grounds, the creak of the floorboards, made what we were doing feel both impossible and inevitable. It was my space, and he was invading it, and I let him. But the fear was always there, sharp and cold. Every creak of the house, every car passing by, was a reminder of what I was risking. Tom wasn't suspicious. He was too busy, too trusting, but I saw threats everywhere. A neighbor lingering too long at the mailbox. A friend asking why I seemed distracted. The weight of it pressed on me heavier each day, but I couldn't stop. Ethan was the air I needed, and I was suffocating without him. That night in the kitchen when Tom walked in, I thought it was over. My hands shook as I stirred the sauce, my mind replaying Ethan's touch, the way his lips had felt against mine. Tom didn't notice the open back door or the flush on my cheeks. He just kissed my temple and asked about dinner, same as always. But I felt like I was unraveling the secret too big to hold. I glanced at the clock, 6:25 now, and wondered how long I could keep this up before it broke me. The days after that kitchen night were a blur of nerves and need. I'd catch myself staring at my phone, waiting for Ethan's name to light up the screen. His texts were short, careful. Can you talk or miss you? But they hit like a shot of adrenaline. I'd delete them right away, my fingers trembling, terrified. Tom might glance over my shoulder, but I'd still check my phone 100 times a day, hating myself for it. Every moment without Ethan felt flat, but every moment with him was a tightrope walk over a cliff. We stole time where we could. A quick meeting in his car parked at the edge of the community center lot, the windows fogging as we leaned into each other, our breaths uneven. A brush of hands in the church hallway on Sunday, his fingers lingering just long enough to make my pulse race. Once we met in the storage room at a friend's barbecue, the air thick with the smell of charcoal and dust, our bodies pressed against a stack of folding chairs. Each time my heart hammered so loud, I thought someone would hear it. I'd go home after my face flushed and force a smile, while Tom talked about his day oblivious. Ethan was careful but reckless too. He'd send me a look across a crowded room, our friend's living room, Tom's office party, his eyes saying everything we couldn't. It was a game, almost seeing how close we could get without anyone noticing. But the thrill came with a cost. My guilt was a constant weight heavy in my chest, waking me up at night with dreams of Tom finding out. I'd lie there, staring at the ceiling fan, imagining the look on his face, hurt, betrayal, the kind of pain I'd never wanted to cause. Yet the next day, I'd see Ethan, and the guilt would fade, drowned out by the heat of his touch. I started slipping. Little things at first, forgetting to pick up Tom's dry cleaning zoning out when he talked about work. He'd ask if I was okay. His brow furrowed, and I'd nod too quick, my voice too bright. Just tired, I'd say. And he'd believe me because he always did. But others noticed too. My sister Jen squinted at me over coffee one morning and said, "You seem off. Everything good with you and Tom?" I laughed it off, but my stomach twisted. I wondered if she could see it on me like a stain I couldn't wash out. The risk kept climbing. One afternoon, Ethan came over to help with the deck, a project Tom had been putting off. Tom was at work, but the neighbors were home, their windows open, their kids playing in the yard next door. We stood in the garage, the air heavy with sawdust and motor oil, and Ethan pulled me close, his hands firm on my waist. I whispered, "We can't." But my body leaned into his, betraying me. His lips grazed my neck, and I closed my eyes, the sound of a lawnmower outside fading to nothing. It was quick, desperate, my back against the workbench tools, clattering to the floor. When we pulled apart, my legs were shaking, and I could barely breathe. As he left, I saw Mrs. Larson, our neighbor, watching from her porch. Her eyes narrowed. She waved, but it felt like a warning. I waved back, my hand unsteady, and hurried inside. My reflection in the kitchen window looked like a stranger's cheeks, flushed, hair-messy eyes, too bright. I gripped the sink, my heart pounding, and told myself we had to stop. But even as I thought it, I knew I wouldn't. Ethan was in my blood now, and I didn't know how to let him go. The closest call came at Tom's birthday dinner. We'd invited friends to a restaurant downtown, a loud place with dim lighting and clinking glasses. Ethan was there, of course, sitting across from me, his knee brushing mine under the table. It was subtle, but it set my skin on fire. Tom was next to me, laughing with a co-worker, his arm draped over the back of my chair. I tried to focus on the conversation, but Ethan's gaze kept pulling me in, his eyes dark and knowing. When I got up to use the restroom, he followed, catching me in the narrow hallway by the bar. "Claire," he murmured, stepping close, his hand grazing my arm. The air smelled of whiskey and perfume, the music thumping through the walls. I shook my head, glancing back toward the dining room, but he didn't move. "I can't stop thinking about you," he said, his voice low, and before I could answer, he kissed me quick and hard, right there, where anyone could have turned the corner. I pulled back, my breath, ragged, my eyes darting to the end of the hallway. "Someone's going to see," I hissed, but my hands were still on his chest, not pushing him away. He nodded, stepping back, but the look in his eyes said he wasn't sorry. I smoothed my dress, my heart in my throat, and walked back to the table, my legs unsteady. Tom smiled as I sat down, oblivious, but Jen was watching me, her head tilted like she was trying to solve a puzzle. When we got home, I poured myself a glass of wine and stood at the kitchen counter, staring at the spot where Ethan had pinned me days before. My hands shook as I sipped the memory of his touch, mixing with the fear of Jen's gaze. I was unraveling, and I knew it. Every moment with Ethan was a step closer to the edge, but I couldn't make myself turn back. I didn't know if it was love or something darker, but it was the only thing that made me feel alive. And that scared me more than getting caught. It was a fight with Tom that pushed me back to Ethan. Nothing big, just the kind of argument that builds over years, him snapping about the dishes, me firing back about his late nights at work. We stood in the living room. The TV muted our voices, sharp but low, like we were afraid the walls would hear. "I'm doing my best, Claire," he said, his hands on his hips, and I wanted to scream that his best wasn't enough, that I was drowning in this life we'd built. Instead, I grabbed my keys and left the door slamming behind me. I drove to Ethan's apartment, my hands tight on the wheel, the rain streaking the windshield. It was reckless. Tom could have called, could have checked my phone's location, but I didn't care. I needed Ethan, needed the way he made the world fall away. His place was a small one-bedroom, cluttered with books and unopened mail, the air heavy with the scent of cedar and leather. When he opened the door, he didn't ask why I was there. He just pulled me inside, his hands already on me, his mouth finding mine before the door clicked shut. We didn't make it to the bedroom. The couch was closer, its leather cold against my skin, as he pressed me down, his weight heavy grounding. The rain hammered the windows, a steady roar that drowned out my gasps, his low murmurs against my ear. His hands were everywhere, my hips, my thighs, my hair urgent but careful, like he was trying to memorize me. My fingers dug into his back, my body arching into his every touch. Electric, every movement rushed. The room was dark except for a street lamp's glow seeping through the blinds, casting stripes across his skin. I could smell his sweat, his cologne, the faint metallic tang of rain on my own clothes. But even then, the fear was there, sharp and jagged. My phone was in my purse, buzzing faintly on the floor. Tom, maybe, or Jen, or nobody, but every vibration felt like a siren. Ethan's rhythm faltered when I tensed, his eyes searching mine. "You okay?" He whispered, his voice rough, and I nodded, but I wasn't. I was terrified of Tom, of myself, of how much I wanted this. I pulled him closer, needing the distraction, needing him to drown out the panic. He obliged, his movements faster, more desperate, until we were both breathless, clinging to each other like we could stop time. After we lay there, the leather sticking to my skin, the rain still pounding outside, my heart wouldn't slow, and not just from what we'd done. I kept picturing Tom at home, waiting, his face tight with worry, or worse, suspicion. Ethan's hand rested on my stomach, his thumb tracing slow circles, but I couldn't relax. "We're gonna get caught," I said, my voice barely audible. He didn't answer right away, just kept touching me like he could soothe the truth away. Finally, he said, "We're careful, Claire, nobody knows." But his voice was too quiet, like he didn't believe it either. I left before the rain stopped, my clothes damp, my hair a mess. The drive home was a blur, my hands shaking as I gripped the wheel. When I walked in, Tom was on the couch, the TV still on. His eyes tired, but not angry. "Where'd you go?" he asked, and I mumbled something about needing air, my voice too high. He nodded, accepting it, but I saw the way his jaw tightened, the way his gaze lingered a second too long. I went to bed early, my skin still tingling with Ethan's touch, my stomach churning with guilt. The next day, I saw Ethan at a neighborhood block party. He was across the street flipping burgers on a grill, laughing with a group of guys. Tom was next to me, a beer in his hand, talking to a neighbor about lawnmowers. I tried to act normal, but every time Ethan's eyes met mine, my breath caught. He was wearing a faded blue shirt, the sleeves rolled up, and I could still feel the warmth of his arms, the pressure of his hands. I forced myself to look away to smile at Tom's story, but my heart was racing, my palms damp. When I went inside to grab more napkins, Ethan followed. The kitchen was empty, the chatter outside muffled by the closed windows. He didn't say anything, just stepped close, his hand brushing my arm. "Don't," I whispered, glancing at the door, but my body leaned toward him, traitor that it was. He kissed me quick and fierce, his hand cupping my face. The smell of charcoal clung to him, mixing with his cologne, and for a moment I forgot where we were. Then a laugh rang out, too close Tom's laugh, and I shoved Ethan back, my heart in my throat. "Go," I said, my voice shaking. He nodded, slipping out the back door, but not before his fingers grazed mine, a promise or a plea. I stood there clutching the napkins, my legs unsteady, trying to slow my breathing. When I walked back outside, Tom was still talking, oblivious, but Jen was watching me again. Her eyes narrow, like she'd seen something she wasn't supposed to. I smiled too wide and handed her the napkins, my hands trembling. That night I lay awake, Tom's steady breathing beside me. The guilt was heavier now, a stone in my chest, but so was the ache for Ethan. I wanted to stop, to go back to the woman I'd been, but I didn't know how. He was the only thing that made me feel alive, and I hated myself for it. I checked my phone, half expecting a text from him, half dreading one from Tom, asking where I'd really been. The screen was blank, but the fear stayed sharp and cold, like a blade I couldn't put down. The suspicion started small, like a crack in a window pane. You don't notice until it spreads. Tom began watching me more closely, not accusing, not yet, but his eyes lingered when I checked my phone, his questions sharper when I came home late from errands. I'd catch him glancing at me over dinner. His fork paused, like he was trying to read something in my face. I'd smile, ask about his day, but my voice sounded hollow, and I wondered if he heard it too. The guilt was a constant now, a weight I carried in my bones, but it didn't stop me from wanting Ethan. If anything, it made the pull stronger, like I was chasing the high to outrun the shame. Jen was worse. At a family brunch, she cornered me in her kitchen while the others laughed in the dining room. "What's going on with you, Claire?" she asked, her voice low, her arms crossed. The air smelled of pancakes and syrup, but her stare was cold. "You're jumpy. You're not yourself." I laughed, brushing it off, but my hands shook as I refilled my coffee. "Just stressed," I said, but she didn't buy it. She stepped closer, her voice dropping. "If something's happening, you can tell me." I wanted to confess, to spill it all, and let the truth burn me clean, but I couldn't. I just shook my head and walked away, my heart pounding. I told Ethan we had to stop. We met in his car, parked behind an abandoned gas station, the air thick with the smell of oil and rust. The windows were cracked, letting in the sound of distant traffic, but it felt like we were the only two people in the world. "This is killing me," I said, my voice breaking. Tom's starting to notice. Jen's asking questions. We're not careful enough. He reached for my hand, his fingers warm, steady, but I pulled back. "We can't keep doing this." His jaw tightened, but he nodded, his eyes dark with something I couldn't name. Hurt, maybe, or resignation. "If that's what you want," he said. But his voice was too quiet, like he knew I didn't mean it. I tried to mean it. For a week, I ignored his texts, deleted them without reading. I threw myself into being the wife I was supposed to be. cooking Tom's favorite meals, planning a weekend getaway, kissing him goodnight like it meant something. But every touch felt wrong, like I was wearing someone else's skin. At night I'd lie awake, my body aching for Ethan, my mind replaying his hands, his voice the way he looked at me, like I was everything. The guilt was unbearable, but so was the emptiness without him. I was trapped, and I'd built the cage myself. Then I slipped. A late-night text from Ethan. "I need to see you," and I was gone sneaking out while Tom slept, driving to a motel on the edge of town. The room was dim, the air stale with cigarette smoke and cheap air freshener. Ethan was waiting, his shirt untucked, his hair messy, and when he pulled me close, I didn't resist. We fell onto the bed, the springs creaking our movements, frantic like we were making up for lost time. His hands were rougher this time, desperate, and I matched him, my nails digging into his shoulders, my breath ragged. The neon sign outside buzzed, casting a red glow across the room, and every creak of the floorboards made me flinch, imagining Tom somehow finding us. After we lay there, the sheets tangled my head on his chest. His heartbeat was steady, but mine wouldn't slow. "We said we'd stop," I whispered, my voice thick. He didn't answer, just ran his fingers through my hair like he could keep me there forever. I wanted to stay to pretend we could have this, but the fear was louder. I pulled away, dressing quickly, my hands clumsy. "I can't keep doing this," I said. But he just looked at me, his eyes saying what we both knew: I'd be back. When I got home, Tom was awake, sitting in the living room, the TV off. My stomach dropped. "Where were you?" he asked, his voice calm, but edged like a blade wrapped in cotton. I fumbled, said I couldn't sleep, went for a drive. He stared at me, his eyes searching, and I felt the lie burning my throat. "You've been doing that a lot," he said, and stood walking past me to bed. The air felt heavy, like the house itself was holding its breath. The next day I found a receipt in my purse motel, parking crumpled but clear. My hands shook as I tore it up, my heart racing. I checked my phone obsessively, half expecting Tom to confront me, half waiting for Ethan to pull me back. A text came through, not from Ethan but Jen. "We need to talk. Now." My blood went cold. I deleted it, but the words stayed clawing at me. I was slipping and I knew it. The secret was too big, too heavy, and I was running out of places to hide it. Every time the phone buzzed, I thought it was the end. But I still checked it anyway. Jen's text haunted me, but she didn't push for answers, not yet. I avoided her calls, made excuses to skip our usual coffee dates, but I could feel her watching, waiting. Tom was quieter too, his eyes tracking me when he thought I wasn't looking. He didn't ask where I'd been again, but the silence was worse, like a storm building just out of sight. I moved through the days on autopilot, cooking, cleaning, smiling when I had to, but inside I was unraveling. The guilt was a blade slicing deeper every time I lied, but the thought of losing Ethan cut just as bad. I was caught torn between two fears, exposure and emptiness. I saw Ethan at a neighbor's cookout, the kind of event we couldn't skip without raising eyebrows. He was by the grill flipping burgers, his laugh carrying over the chatter. Tom was next to me, his hand on my lower back, casual but possessive, like he sensed something without knowing what. I kept my eyes on my drink, the ice melting in the plastic cup, but Ethan's presence pulled at me, a current I couldn't ignore. When he looked my way, his gaze heavy, my skin flushed, and I turned away, terrified someone would notice. I slipped inside to get away, needing air, needing space. The house was cool, the hum of the AC drowning out the party noise. I stood in the kitchen, gripping the counter when Ethan walked in. "Claire," he said, his voice low, and I shook my head, stepping back. "Not here," I whispered, but he closed the distance, his hand brushing my arm. The air smelled of lemon cleaner and charcoal from his shirt, and my resolve crumbled. He kissed me quick, desperate, his body pressing me against the counter. My hands gripped his shirt, pulling him closer, even as my heart screamed to stop. The patio door was open, voices drifting in. and every sound was a warning. Tom, Jen, anyone could walk in. I pushed him back, my breath shaky. "We can't," I said. But my voice was weak, and he knew it. His eyes searched mine, full of want, and something softer, something that scared me more. "I'm trying, Claire," he said, "but I can't stay away." I wanted to tell him to try harder, to let me go, but I couldn't say it. Instead, I slipped out back to the party, my heart pounding, my lips still tingling from his. That night, Tom found my phone. I'd left it on the counter careless, and when I walked into the kitchen, he was holding it, his thumb hovering over the screen. My stomach dropped. "Why's it locked?" he asked, his voice calm but tight. I'd changed the passcode weeks ago, paranoia creeping in, but I hadn't told him. "Just habit," I said, reaching for it, but he didn't hand it over right away. His eyes narrowed, searching mine, and for a moment I thought he'd demand to see it. Then he set it down slow and walked away. I grabbed the phone, my hands shaking, and deleted Ethan's messages, my chest tight with panic. The next day, Jen showed up at the house unannounced. Tom was at work, and I was folding laundry, the dryer's hum filling the silence. She didn't sit, just stood in the living room, her arms crossed. "I saw you," she said, her voice low, sharp. My heart stopped. "At the cookout. You and Ethan. In the kitchen." I opened my mouth to deny it, but nothing came out. Her eyes were hard, but there was hurt there too. "He's Tom's best friend, Claire. What the hell are you doing?" I stammered. Said it was nothing. A misunderstanding, but she shook her head. "Don't lie to me, I know you." She didn't tell Tom, not then, but she didn't have to. The truth was out, even if it was just between us. She left, and I sank onto the couch, my hands trembling, the weight of her words crushing me. I texted Ethan, told him Jen knew, told him we were done. He called, but I didn't answer. I couldn't. The fear was too big now, swallowing everything else. I kept picturing Tom's face, the way it would break if he found out, the way our life would shatter. But even then, I missed Ethan. His touch, his voice, the way he made me feel alive. The ache was physical, a hollow in my chest I couldn't fill. I tried to pull back to be the wife Tom deserved. I cooked his favorite dinner, sat through his stories about work, kissed him goodnight. But it felt like a performance, and I was slipping. Ethan didn't push, but he didn't disappear either. I'd see him at the store in the neighborhood, his eyes finding mine, and it was like no time had passed. The pull was still there, stronger than my resolve, and I hated myself for it. Then Jen called again a week later. "I haven't told Tom," she said, her voice cold, "but I will if you don't end it. For real." I nodded, though she couldn't see, and promised I would. But when I hung up, I didn't text Ethan to say goodbye. I couldn't. Instead, I stood in the kitchen, staring at the counter where he'd kissed me, my hands shaking. The clock ticked steady, counting down to something I couldn't stop. We were careful. We thought we were invisible. But secrets don't stay secrets forever. And I don't know what scares me more, losing him or being found out.